Indigo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I rise to speak against the bill that's before the House. And this is a bill that, when the government first announced it, my reflection was the same of many in my electorate: ridiculous, ludicrous. And I was very proud when the opposition leader came out and said those exact same words. This bill is ridiculous, it is ludicrous, it is about distraction and it is about division. It is not something that this place or this parliament or the Prime Minister should be proud of. And I speak as a member that represents a diverse electorate. And when I say the word diverse, I mean politically diverse. After I was pre-selected in 2012 and I held one of my first listening posts in Epsom at the shopping centre, I had an older gentleman come up and berate me for Labor's policy on asylum seekers. He was ashamed. He was disgusted. He wanted Labor to be more compassionate and show respect for asylum seekers. The very next person came up to me and said, and she was a mum that had 3 children, "Lisa, we should blow up the boats. Don't let them come here." That is the diversity of views in my electorate. And since that point, it's taught me a lot about how we engage with people. To the mum with 3 kids, I said, "OK, let's talk about what's happening in Syria." And that stage, we were talking about the hundreds of thousands of people who had lost their lives. Bendigo's population is 100,000. And I said to this young mum, what if everyone in your town in Bendigo had been killed? What if every building had been bombed? What would you and your family do? You would run. And you would seek asylum in a country where there was not the killings, there was not the bombings. And it was in that moment that young mum stopped and looked at me and said, "Maybe you've got a point, Lisa." It is through engagement and talking to people that we can turn this debate around. But what the government has done in a moment when they are tanking in the polls, in a moment when they are freaking out about their own jobs, they've yet again put forward a ludicrous and ridiculous policy of banning people who are trying to arrive in this country by boat, who were tricked, who were paid lots of money, who were promised citizenship, who were promised that they would get to be brought to this lucky country. They have proposed the most ludicrous ban to try and save themselves. Some of the actions that have occurred in my electorate, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the work of Love Makes Our Way. They held a protest at the front of my office not that long ago, and I've brought in some of the notes from that, that they plastered cutouts of a human, little figures on my windows with messages, and I've brought some of them here today to read into Hansard to acknowledge their thoughts and their views. One states all persons are entitled to dignity and respect. It is not illegal to seek asylum by boat. Lisa, our prayers are with you. Be a voice for compassion. Love makes a way. It's time for a government to stand up and to show compassion. I believe it is time for justice to flow to those who are not lucky enough to be born here, but to everyone. These are just a few of the little figurines that were posted on my window that day. Since the government has announced this shocking legislation, I've also been contacted by a number of people who live in my electorate. And I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge their words and read them into Hansard. So, Wayne Nutting of Castlemaine, I know you hate that the asylum seekers are incarcerated, their lives wrecked, and that indefinite detention does not stop the boats. The brilliant asylum seeker student that I tutor in order to help her do well at Year 12 could continue to contribute greatly to whatever community she will live and work. provided she does not get sent back to unquestionable danger in her country of origin. The minister's proposed bill to ban every person seeking asylum from ever coming to our country, to Australia, is wrong. Lynette Burke from Kennington. I feel so distressed about the way our government is treating people seeking asylum in our country. I am disgusted to think that the Coalition is planning to introduce a bill which will ban every person seeking asylum who the government has imprisoned on Nauru and Manus Island from ever coming to Australia. Please, Ms Chesters, will you block this bill? Blocking the bill will open the way to push for an actual real solution that will allow people to rebuild their lives in safety. Alan Reynolds from Castlemaine. The move proposed by the minister to ban refugees on Nauru and Manus Island from entering Australia is vicious and cruel. This is deeply offensive. To never allow a person into Australia is not what was proposed by the Rudd government, and we should not let the government twist it into this. This bill must be blocked. It's another contravention of our support for refugees and the policies of the UN. Sue Williams from Kangaroo Flat. Please work hard to block this bill to prevent asylum seekers on Nauru and Manus Island from ever coming to Australia. These people have been through so much. Taking away their hopes is cruel and inhumane. I find it more and more difficult to be proud of being an Australian as a government who continues with heartless policy on refugees. This bill will add suffering to the people already traumatised and should show a complete lack of compassion. I ask Labor to stand up and block this bill, representing the many Australians who believe that all human beings deserve a chance for safe, happy and healthy life. Merrin Gibson from Newbridge. I wish to register my disgust at the treatment of asylum seekers and refugees by the Australian government in the name of border security. On a recent overseas trip 12 days ago to Paris, my daughter and I were challenged over our government's treatment of asylum seekers and refugees. This is a worldwide issue and we are on the world stage for the wrong reasons. Deputy Speaker, as I said, this bill is about division, it is about distraction. It is about a government that is desperate and tanking in the polls. And they're trying to use an old political tactic that they've successfully used in Australian politics since 2001. And who are the people that they wish to demonise and target? My office has been working closely with about 15 asylum seekers who came by boat, arrived in this country, moved to Bendigo before this government came to power. And at the moment, this government is blocking their applications to become Australian citizens. Since arriving in Bendigo and our community, they are making an amazing and wonderful contribution to our community, and it should be celebrated. And Deputy Speaker, I've changed their names because I have to be honest, I do not trust this minister and this government. I'd hate to think that anything that I say in this place could impact on any of these particular individuals who have sought help from my office. So John came into my office seeking advice. Heartbreakingly, John's 3-year-old daughter is in Pakistan and he has never met her. He also has an 11-year-old son. He currently works at Hazeldene's, which is a chicken manufacturing and processing company in the electorate, and he talks to his family regularly via Viper as often as he can. Also working at Hazeldene's is Michael. I first met Michael as a workplace delegate. He is a delegate and stands up for his workmates and makes sure that they have a safe workplace. He is a leader within his workplace and in his community. In fact, quite a number of these asylum seekers who are now permanent residents in Australia work at Hazeldene's, and all of them are hoping that this government has heart and allows them to become Australian citizens so that they can bring their family here. I also met and working closely with Richard. The first time I met Richard was actually at the New and Emerging Community Leaders Forum and program. He is a leader of his community. The Victorian government granted him a sponsorship to do this community leadership program. And yet this government says he is not worthy to be an Australian citizen. This government will not process his claims and not allow him to bring his wife here. Workplace leaders, community leaders, people working in food processing, manufacturing, people who are part of our cricket teams, who are CFA volunteers, people who are contributing so much to our community, who arrived by boat in 2011, 2012 and 2013, yet under this policy would be banned from even coming to Australia and setting foot on Australian soil. These are the people that the government wishes to demonise and target. These are the people that the government wants to ban under this policy from ever coming here. The member for Denison in his contribution had an attack on Labor and an attack on our policy. And I would suggest to the member for Denison that he actually read Australian Labor's policy, a policy which large parts of it I am very proud of. Labor has said that we want to increase funding to UNHCR, $450 million to help refugees in countries of transit, to help refugees in countries of origin have their claims processed. There is a UN refugee processing centre in Indonesia, but it doesn't have the funding it requires to process asylum seekers. When you have this conversation with people in the electorate, they say, well, that just makes sense. That's good policy. Save some money with offshore processing, fund the UN to do it properly. Labor has also said that we want to see asylum seekers' applications processed in 90 days. Labor has said that we want to increase the number of refugees that we take into our country because we do have the capacity and the capability to support more people. Labor has a policy that is about compassion, that is about maintaining respect for asylum seekers and refugees. Labor's policy is about being inclusive. And it's easy politics for those on the left to belittle, to say that we're just the same as the others, when it is simply not true. If you are on the left side of politics and, having read Labor's policy, still stand in this place and say we are exactly the same as the Liberal Party, then you too are being dishonest, because our policy on asylum seekers is different. We believe in regional processing. We believe in funding the UNHCR. We believe in supporting people claiming asylum. So it is wrong for those on both the left and the right to continue this divisive politics. And what I know from people in my electorate that I speak to regularly about this issue, that they want the games to end, that they want to go back to what happened in the 70s and 80s, before John Howard tried to save himself and the Tampa election, before the Greens used this as a way to wedge Labor. They want this country to return to its obligations under the UNHCR. They want to see the people who I've mentioned, and perhaps if their names were John, Paul, Richard, their citizenship claims would have been processed by now. Perhaps if the people in Nauru and Manus Island, if their names were John, Paul and Richard, we would not be debating this policy. I call on the government to end this division. I call on the government to be honest, to look into their hearts and cross the floor on this ludicrous and ridiculous policy. It is wrong to ban somebody from ever coming to this country just because they got tricked onto getting onto a boat. They were promised a life here in Australia, a life that we are all so fortunate, whether we came here, whether our parents came here, whether we were born here. Do not punish them, embrace them and give them the chance to come and be part of our community.